Okay, we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting like fractions in this video, and like fractions are fractions with the same denominator. We've already covered multiplication and division of fractions, and now we're going to cover addition and subtraction. The easiest types of fractions to add and subtract are like fractions if they have the same denominator. That means we're talking about the same size pieces. That's what that denominator tells us, the size of our pieces. So to do that, we're going to add the numerators together and write the sum over that same denominator. So the denominator doesn't change. We're just changing the numerator because we're combining the amount of how many of each size piece we have. Same thing with subtraction of fractions. With the same denominator, we're just going to subtract the numerators to get our result. So let's take a look at some examples of fractions that have the same denominator and finding the sum or difference, dealing with positives and negatives here. First one, 5/6 plus 4/6. This one's pretty straightforward. Just going to add those numerators together and get 9/6. And as always, we want to simplify our fractions, and this in simplest form would be 3/2, or as a mixed number, 1 1/2, and there's your result. Easy peasy. Next one, when we're dealing with negatives, remember how we're adding positives and negatives. Here they have different signs. They cancel each other out, so there's going to be some canceling going on here. So we can think of this as 4 plus -6, or just 4 minus 6, and that's going to give us -2/7, and that is in simplest form. Next one, we've got some mixed numbers that we're going to add together here. Now, when we're adding positives together, positive mixed numbers together, I would leave those as mixed numbers. We don't really need to change these to improper fractions to combine them because it's pretty straightforward. We can add our whole numbers together, we can add the fractions together, and everything will work out just great. So if I add 3 and 8 together, I get 11. And the 2/5 plus the 1/5 is 3/5, and that gives me 11 3/5. So let's look at the next one here. We've got two negative mixed numbers involved here. Now, something that I always do when there's a negative mixed number involved is to change them to improper fractions. It's going to save a lot of errors later. So just do yourself a favor when you've got a negative mixed number involved in a problem. Change those to improper fractions and you'll avoid a lot of confusion. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So -2 3/7 is -17/7, and I'm going to be adding -4 5/7, which is -33/7. So now I can just deal with the numerators. Now I don't have to worry about dealing with mixed numbers. And when I combine the numerators together, I get -50/7, or if I change that back to a mixed number, -7 1/7. Okay, that'll just make our life a little bit easier when dealing with those negative mixed numbers. Here I've got a subtraction problem, 3/9 minus 4/9. Again, I'm just going to deal with the numerators. 3 minus 4 is -1. And then 9 is my denominator, -1/9. That's in simplest form. 7/8 minus 3/8 is 4/8, which is 1/2 in simplest form. And then here again, I've got a negative mixed number involved in this problem. So I am going to go ahead and turn these into improper fractions so I don't mess up with the fraction parts of this problem. -8 3/10 is -83/10 minus 49/10. So now this problem has been reduced to -83 minus 49, or -83 plus a -49. So this is going to become even more negative. So I get -132/10, which as a mixed number is -13 2/10, which is -13 1/5. Is my result there. So again, the tip of the day here, if you have negative mixed numbers in your problem and you're adding and subtracting, please change those to improper fractions and you will avoid a lot of common error. And then again, evaluating expressions that contain fractions. So I have a minus b, and a is equivalent to 3/8 and b is -5/8. So I need to put in a negative 5/8 here. And subtracting a negative, this is like addition. So this is basically 3/8 plus 5/8, which is 8/8, which is 1 whole. And there's my answer. And then B minus C, I have negative 5/8 minus 7/8, or negative 5/8 plus a negative 7/8. I could think of it that way. And that's going to give me, either way, negative 12/8, which is negative 3/2, or in mixed number form, negative 1 and 1/2. So adding and subtracting like fractions, pretty straightforward. The denominator is not going to change. We're just going to deal with the numerators, adding and subtracting. And again, remember that tip of the day: if you have negative mixed numbers, please change them to improper fractions to avoid common errors.